Appreciate everybody joining. Good afternoon, happy lunchtime, or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. I know everybody's pretty busy, and I really appreciate you guys participating today. We're going to discuss some things that have been on our committee's agenda since the San Diego meeting in March. And I think the first thing that we'll begin discussing is the proposed amendments to the NCOIL Insurance E-Commerce Model Act. And then we'll discuss a resolution in support of the establishing national standards and procedures for the reporting and payment of premium taxes due as a result of interstate insurance transactions. And the actual model is much more complicated than even those many, many words. So I look forward to the conversation about that. I'm going to, from here on out, just call it the independent procurement resolution because I just don't have time. There aren't going to be any votes on the items that we talk about today. I want to be clear about that. But I do hope that after today's meeting and the discussions that follow, we'll be able to vote on these items at our meeting in November. And I specifically the independent procurement resolution, because I think that there will be a lot of discussion about that. So Will, Tom, is it all right to proceed?
Mr. Chairman, if we could just do a quick roll call and then get into the substance.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Okay. So we'll start with committee members that have registered for this call. New York Assemblyman Ken Blankenbush. New York Assemblyman Jarek Gandolfo. New York Senators Pam Helmy. New York Assemblyman David Weprin. I do see he is on there. I think he's on mute. Ohio Senator Bob Hackett.
I'm here.
Kentucky Representative Mike Meredith.
Here.
West Virginia Delegate Steve Westfall. North Dakota Senator Sean Vida.
Here.
Vice Chair Kentucky Representative Tammy Nuccio. We do have Chair Bennett. Then moving to non-committee members that have registered, California Assemblyman Tim Grayson. Kansas Representative Chris Croft. Kentucky Representative Deanna Gordon.
Yes, sir.
Minnesota Senator Paul Utke. North Dakota Senator Jeff Barda. Florida Representative Linda Cheney.
I'm here. I'm here.
Thank you, Representative Cheney.
Thank you.
South Carolina Representative Carl Anderson.
Present.
All right, are there any other legislators present that I did not call?
Senator Walter Michelle is on the call.
Senator Walter Michelle. Anyone else?
Representative Jordan.
Representative Jordan, thank you. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think you're all set. Mr. Chairman, you're on mute.
Thanks. I turned 34 and I just can't work technology anymore. Thank you for, and that's why we need Will right next to me. But anyway, I think we're going to discuss first the proposed amendments to the Insurance E-Commerce Model Act. And again, there aren't going to be any votes today, but these amendments are sponsored by Louisiana Representative Edmund Jordan, and I'll turn things over to him if that's all right.
Well, thank you, Chairman Bennett, and thank you to everyone who's been working on this issue and providing feedback to us. It's been very helpful. In 2020, as most of you know, I've sponsored the underlying model that we're discussing today, which sets forth the provisions on how certain insurance documents can be delivered to policyholders electronically. And since that time, almost every state has adopted the model in some manner. And so, again, as always, I'm proud to sponsor amendments to that model, which generally mirror the laws of several states that have enacted this again, including my home state here in Louisiana, that permit health plan sponsors to consent on behalf of covered persons for e-delivery of certain health plan notices and those disclosures. Importantly, I think it's important for us to remember now that these laws preserve a covered person's ability to opt back into the paper delivery system. So if they don't want to stay with the e-delivery, they can certainly go back into the paper delivery system if they so choose. But there is an attestation process involved that requires the confirmation that employees routinely use electronic communications during their normal course of employment. So you have to have that as well. I understand that there are some edits that have been to these amendments that are being developed to clarify some of these issues. And I look forward to reviewing them and hopefully getting this across the finish line in November. So with that being said, I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman Bennett.
And I'll unmute myself. Thank you so much, Representative Jordan. And I'm hopeful that there will be some people who want to discuss some of this stuff. So I'd like to open this up to interested parties first, and then I'll open up to legislators. Are there any interested parties wishing to speak? And if so, please announce yourself and state who you're representing.
Thank you, Chairman Bennett. This is Molly Zito, representing United Healthcare. And I just wanted to say thank you to Representative Jordan for sponsoring this amendment. And I wanted to just give you an update. As Representative Jordan alluded to, we are working with the Independent Agents Association at West Bissett on updating some of the language from the amendment. And we're hoping to get that finished in the next couple of weeks. We've been back and forth, and so we want to make sure that we have it finished well in advance of the 30-day materials, and we'll do that. And Representative Jordan will certainly work with you before submitting the final to NCOIL. So just let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Molly. I appreciate that. And I'll say this again later, but if there are concerns or questions that come up after this meeting before the next one, please email me or NCOIL staff about it, and I'll say that again later. Are there any legislators? Oh, well, I guess, hold on, before I do that, any other interested parties wishing to speak on this? All right. I will move on to legislators then. Any legislators wishing to speak on this issue? Unless you're muted, maybe there isn't anyone. If that's the case, we will go ahead. Again, please be sure to submit thoughts or comments on this issue to Representative Jordan or myself or NCOIL staff. And frankly, if there's anything that you have regarding this, please do CC Edmund on it, just so that he's up to snuff on whatever's going on. Next is the continued discussion on the independent procurement resolution, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a shortened version of a much longer name. So the discussion on this started at the spring meeting this past March, and it's generated a lot of feedback, a lot of which may be misguided just based on what I've gathered, because it doesn't seem like there's much concerning to me, but I look forward to hearing from interested parties and other legislators. Nonetheless, that's why we're having this discussion, so everyone can provide their comments and we can work towards addressing any issues. As we're aware, we, of course, want to focus on producing the best possible work and being transparent about the process. So I look forward to hearing more feedback today in light of the revised version of the resolution, which was recently distributed, which I hope you've all looked at. I anticipate further revisions will be made. There is not a sponsor yet to this resolution. Representative Tom Oliverson of Texas is considering signing on to sponsor, but he wants to wait and has wanted to wait before more of a consensus can be reached on some of the issues, which I'm hoping we can kind of open up today. And unfortunately, he couldn't join us today due to a family issue. Before I open up the discussion, though, I do want to note one thing that I think has persisted throughout the conversations I've had and others have had about this is that it deals with creating a mechanism by which states can collect unpaid tax revenue. That seems like an issue that everybody should be able to agree on, no matter who you represent. I mean, I'm a Democrat in Oklahoma. I'd love to be able to bring in more tax revenue without having to raise taxes. But it seems like an issue that we can all agree on. I look forward to hearing from anybody who may disagree. But anyone who wants to be speaking today, I'd like them to address that issue specifically, especially if they've got an issue with it and why they think there might be problems with having an NCOIL resolution related to it. And lastly, I want to point out that some issues have been raised with respect to this impacting the surplus lines market, but The revised version strikes all references to surplus lines. And if you read this resolution and disagree with that, please let us know. We can make further edits to make sure that surplus lines are not mentioned. As I noted in the beginning, we're not going to be voting on this, but I did anticipate this one being the one that we would have more conversation around. So I'm hopeful that between now and starting today, we can kind of get to pointing towards a consensus on the issue so that we can have a vote on it one way or another come November. So I'd like to open this up to interested parties first for questions or comments.
Mr. Chairman, this is Alex Gonzalez in Austin, Texas. I represent Providence Insurance Company, which is one of the proponents of this resolution, the proposed resolution. I'm nervous. I don't really talk to a whole lot of legislators, and I usually talk to juries and judges, and here I've got a pretty notable group of individuals, so very stressful for me. I was a former deputy insurance commissioner and acting commissioner at the Texas Department of Insurance, but that was many years ago. In my 70 years on this earth, I was also former naval officer, 9 years active duty and 7 in the reserves. So a shout out to all you veterans that are out there. After TDI, I went to major law firms, most recently Wayne Morris, and in that time, my favorite client was the Surplus Lines Stamping Office of Texas. I was for 30 years the general counsel of that entity, so I think I'm fairly familiar with surplus lines, and I see a lot of my surplus lines colleagues on this call. Now, because I was a Surplus Lines Stamping Office General Counsel, I did not represent surplus lines agents or eligible surplus lines carriers, and I didn't represent insureds that were adverse to those entities. However, I did represent, and I am currently representing several large insurance brokers, carriers, major policyholder corporations, and international non-admitted direct placement transactions. Now, the reason I was able to do this and not run into a conflict is because surplus lines insurance is distinctly different from independent procured. It's two different concepts. I'm glad the chairman raised that issue right off the bat. Surplus lines is very complicated. That's why we have so many specialists around the country. The stamping offices provide valuable service to their insureds. Independent procured is not quite as complicated. There are some specialists, not as many as in surplus lines, but there's two basic requirements for surplus independent procured. And then there's a third implicit requirement. And I'm gonna go through this real quickly, very quickly, but I think you need to know this so you'll see the intent of the resolution. Okay, now the first is that the transaction has to be principally negotiated outside the insured state. So if the insured is in Oklahoma, there cannot be an insurance broker in the state of Oklahoma. The insurance company cannot show up in Oklahoma. It has to be principally negotiated and placed outside the state. Okay, that's important to understand. Now, the second is that the insured, not the broker, there's no broker, but not the insurance company, which is not supposed to have any presence in the state. So the insured, your constituents, have to pay the direct placement premium tax. And then there's a third requirement, which is typically implicit and is also kind of a driving influence here, is that you can't have an insurance agent or other representative of the insurer, of the insurance company in the state. Okay, so basically your insured is left on its own to pay the tax. Okay? The insurance company cannot help. The insurance company can encourage them, please pay the tax, but the insured is on its own. Now they can have an attorney or they can have an accountant, but again, there's a lot of folks that know surplus lines, but not that many that know independent procured tax. So the insurer, and certainly there's no agents, so cannot help the insured place this tax. Now, the issue is that the procedures to pay the tax are not uniform, and we're not even urging uniformity, but they're not clear. They're not clear. So in some states, like my home state, Texas, we have procedures and forms that are easily found on the Texas Comptroller's webpage. You can just go on the webpage, type in Texas Comptroller, independently procured tax, and you can find the form and it's easily paid. But you have to know that you go to the text, you don't go to the surplus line stamping office, you don't go to TDI, you have to go to the comptroller. And you have to know that. Okay, somebody has to know that. Okay, but in other states, it's vague, it's ambiguous. I went to one state, I was trying to help this client. I went to one state, I'm not going to pick on any particular state. I've been doing this, I'm 70 years old. I've been doing this for 40 years. I couldn't find the form. I finally found it. And you know what I found? I found an archived, Google archive version of the form. Okay, now I know there's some others, probably there's some specialists, some other folks that know how to find it easier, but I'm just saying that's what it took me. So you can imagine one of your insureds trying to find this. Now, independent procured insurance is not suitable for homeowners, auto, personal lines. Okay, this is basically commercial businesses, typically large ones like Exxon, who used to be my client, but sometimes it's smaller companies that have 100 employees or whatever. I mean, typically, the folks that are in your home districts, okay? And so it's not for everyone, it's not for every transaction, but if it is appropriate and they want to pay the tax, they ought to be able to find a way to pay the tax. And that's the issue. Now, Florida has developed Surplus Lines Insurance Portal. Okay, now listen to that name, Surplus Lines Insurance Portal. In Florida and the 10 states that use this particular software, you pay the independent procured tax through that portal. Okay. So you have to know that that's where you pay the independently procured tax. Okay, so in Florida, it's very transparent. It's their program. There was another state I went to visit with the commissioner. We told them about it. Turned out they didn't have it on their webpage. They immediately put it on their webpage. They tripled the reported premium tax, independent procured premium tax within 2 months. Okay, just by simple change, by letting folks know that you pay the independently procured tax through the SLIP, the Surplus Lines Insurance Portal. So,
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, I'm sorry, Alex,
yes,
but the whole call's only scheduled for an hour. We need you to speak to the resolution.
I'll finish right up. Okay, so.
Okay, we need you to get to the resolution.
Yes, sir, right here. Okay, good, thank you. I'm a lawyer and get paid by the hour, so I apologize. The draft was ambiguous. It had problems. The reference to surplus lines was misleading. Shouldn't have been there. We're going to take it out. The reference to non-admitted carriers paying, reporting the tax, good idea, bad result. We're going to take it out. It's very streamlined. I plan to meet with the directors of the stamping office and WSIA later this month in Chicago. We're hopeful that that form will be, the form of that resolution will be acceptable to all. So that's it. All right, sorry to take up so much time.
Mr. Chairman, I'll mute again.
Yeah, thank you. I made a really great joke about the terrible Longhorns in the background of his office. Alex, I'll be seeing you next week in Dallas, where hopefully my team will actually show up, unlike we did last year.
Well,
thank you so much.
Got to let us win once in a while. You can't just,
And you got your one in a
row is not fair.
One in a decade. That's all you get. If you wouldn't mind, Alex, if you could type up sort of a synopsis of what you were discussing here today, just because I know it is complicated, and I want people to be able to consume this. We had a couple of folks have to leave during your presentation, and so I want to be able to send some of that stuff out.
Okay, I didn't realize I was that long-winded. Okay.
No, it's all right. I appreciate it. I was enjoying your details. So if just for my own edification and others, please do send if you could send that to me. I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
I assume there may be some others that want to speak on this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
John Mates with the Wholesale and Specialty Insurance Association. I'd like a couple minutes if.
That's fine. You have no Longhorns in the background of your office, so that's fine.
Well, my K-State Wildcats helmet got lost in the mail, so
I get it.
But I'll save the college football for the next call. So like I said, John Mates with the Wholesale Specialty Insurance Association, Director of Government Relations, and we appreciate the fact that the staff took some time to make some revisions on this. We appreciate NCOIL for hearing our concerns. And frankly, we are, in full agreement with the stated goal of the resolution, which is collecting uncollected tax revenue. Nobody disagrees with that. And I think there are certainly some processes among individual states where that can be improved. So, no quibble there. I think we talked a little bit about how the bill does not affect surplus lines insurance. The Wholesale Specialty Insurance Association, we represent both surplus lines brokers who place surplus lines insurance and the non-admitted carriers who underwrite those transactions. Those non-admitted carriers also underwrite the independently procured transactions. So that's part of why we're involved in this discussion here. And we really appreciate Alex for laying out some of the potential amendments to the bill, specifically bullet 4 under be it resolved. So that would require insurers to report premium taxes. It sounds like that may be coming out. It's still in the most recent draft that I saw, but just a couple of notes on that. That is problematic for a couple of reasons. So, sorry, let me get to my notes here. So the responsibility for filing and paying taxes in a non-admitted insurance transaction falls on the surplus lines broker, or in the case of independent procurement, on the insured themselves. And that's not a loophole or an accident. It's intentional public policy. And it's designed to facilitate non-admitted insurance as a safety net for the admitted market. So non-admitted insurers do not have access to the data necessary to determine the home state of the insured as defined by the Federal Non-Admitted and Reinsurance Reform Act. So we're very pleased to hear that may be coming out, but we would not support any resolution that includes that. And real briefly, one more comment. I think we do have some lingering concerns with maybe the underlying intent of the resolution itself, and that's just because independent procurement is extremely rare. There are certain assumptions that are made about the entities that seek insurance without the assistance of a licensed agent or surplus lines broker. So they're large entities, they're sophisticated companies, so much so that they're aware of and capable of navigating their regulatory and tax obligations for procuring their own insurance. To the extent that the resolution is seeking to make that process more accessible to your average Joe, I think NCOIL just needs to seriously contemplate that question. To the extent that we need to have discussions with states to make it so that your sophisticated entities can find a form on their website, we're all for that. I think that's an admirable goal, and I think that those discussions can be had. What we want to avoid is a situation where we're trying to proliferate independent procurement to non-sophisticated entities. So, I think that's more of a philosophical question, but just wanted to pose that to the group and mention that, which is, part of our lingering concern. We're very pleased to continue ongoing discussions with that. Happy to talk to Alex about that, further down the road. And with that, I'll close. Thanks for your time, and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Thanks. Actually, yeah, I've got one. I'm curious if I understand correctly. I think you all may be opposed to a requirement that insurance regulators and tax regulators have all the information about taxes due. If that's wrong, please correct me. I get corrected all the time. And if it's true, can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, not incorrect, but I think a little bit, maybe a little get lost in the weeds here. So the obligations legally in the United States for the regulatory obligations and tax obligations on non-admitted transactions fall on either the surplus lines broker or the insured. And so they are the responsible entities in this case. And we think they should continue to be held responsible for all of their tax obligations, all of their regulatory obligations in those cases. The non-admitted insurer is not necessarily privy to the information. I know it seems weird, but they're not actually privy to the information that's required for submitting the taxes, because they don't necessarily know in a multi-state transaction what the quote legal home state of the insured is. So it's a very complicated situation. Non-admitted insurers do submit their premium information. But that is for solvency purposes. So they do that on the Schedule T to their state of domicile. They are regulated in that way, but the responsibility for paying the taxes falls on either the insured, or in very rare cases where independent procurement occurs, on the insured and independent procurement, and on the surplus lines broker in a surplus lines transaction. I'm sorry, I don't know if did that help?
Yes, it did. So I was trying to plug my computer back in. Yes, it did, and I appreciate that. And I asked Alex to do this, but if it's all right with you, if it's not anything, trade secrets or anything, if you could type up as well sort of a synopsis of what your concerns are, and send that to me, I'd really appreciate that, just so that I can wrap my mind around it.
And
before.
I should have mentioned, we did submit comments already. They are posted on the page.
Okay.
I think we are probably going to submit a follow-up to that, depending on how conversations go down the road.
Great. Well, I really appreciate your input, and I'm hopeful that we can get some of your questions and concerns assuaged before the November meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Hey, no problem. Is there anyone else, any interested parties that would want to speak on this before I move on to legislators?
Mr. Chairman, this is Janet Payne, the new executive director at Alini. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Nice to meet you. Nice to be part of this prestigious group. So if I may have the floor to just highlight a couple of comments from Alini's perspective.
Floor is yours.
Thank you. So we appreciate Mr. Gonzalez's edits to the document, but we remain a little bit unclear on exactly what the resolution solves for in its current state. So maybe just a little bit of my background for those of you who don't know me. In my previous role, which was 24 years at WTW, and the last role running the Global Services and Solutions network for the multinational clients seeking insurance coverage for global risks, I have a lot of experience with independent procurement. And my experience with this particular type of placement is that they are largely and meant to be used by large sophisticated buyers who have large tax teams who understand their tax obligations. And they are placed with largely insurers located in the Caribbean, Bermuda, the UK, Puerto Rico, who is the client that that Alex is representing with this piece of this resolution. So those insurers are not located in the US and would not be subject to the additional reporting requirements suggested by the resolution. So any subsequent laws proposed by the state represented here would also not be applicable to where most of these independent procurement transactions are being placed. And in the case of Alex's client, it is a Puerto Rico insurance carrier, right? So that said, I reiterate that I'm not sure that the resolution is solving the problem you wish to solve, and that we firmly stand behind. We absolutely believe that the states should be seeing their taxes. But I think our other concern is that we don't want to expand IP to consumers, right? Because consumer protection is something that the regulators are very concerned with, right? And we don't believe they want to see a growth in IP in this consumer segment, as the buyers there really benefit from having a licensed broker or agent advocate for them in the event of a claim. Right. And that claims advocacy role doesn't exist in independent procurement. So I think that's really the thrust of it, is we don't think that this is targeting the right solution. I'm all for upgrading the websites, right, so that we get the admirable goal of tax payments more clear. To, Alex, you mentioned the story about the websites and not being able to find how to pay it for those good citizens who wish to pay it, and we support that wholeheartedly. But that's not addressed in the resolution. So with that, we still have some concerns around the resolution. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I appreciate your input there. I guess it's explained to me that the purpose of the resolution is just to facilitate the payment of premium tax payments or insurance premium tax payments. Is that how you see it?
It's not how it's written. I think that's what we've heard the intention of it is. But let me ask you, how will these buyers who don't know how to pay their taxes today be found by these entities who wish to have the rights assigned to them? I'm not sure. We're not sure, how this independent procurement is working. If there's no one soliciting the business, which is not allowed by independent procurement, who's advising that insured on how to pay the tax, right? So I think there's just some confusion in the way it's written.
I understand. Okay, well, I'm hoping that with some of the removal of surplus lines and excess line stuff that this gets a little bit more cleared up. But I appreciate your comments. Nevertheless,
thank you.
Is there anyone else in the interested party category that wants to tell me how upset they are with me? All right, let's move on to legislators who are upset. Yes.
It's Carrie Lee from, I'm representing the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers, and I'm not telling you that we're upset with you.
Oh, thank goodness. Been the front door.
Just wanted to say that we would echo some of the comments that John Mitz made, and that we'll work with our members to submit some formal comments to you on this resolution. But, I would definitely agree with some of the other speakers who said that independent procurement is, I think of Microsoft, very large companies who are making those types of procurements, or they're going out and searching on their own, and they're very sophisticated buyers. This is not, your personal lines, you and me going out to get homeowners on our own without an agent. And I think, from a regulatory standpoint, I put on that insurance regulator hat that I know a lot of you already all have as well. In those cases, you really do need that licensed agent. So we'll put our comments together as well and get those into you, and work with the rest of the parties to hopefully reach a resolution for the resolution.
Thank you. That was a fun little play on words there. Thank you. I appreciate that, and I look forward to reading the comments. Is there anybody else in the interested parties that want to speak? Okay. Legislators? Eternally quiet, the legislator, always. Okay. Well, again, please do be sure to submit any thoughts or comments to me and to NCOIL staff so that they can explain to me what some of your comments mean. Is there any additional business before my committee today? Tom, Will, is there any additional business before my committee today?
We don't have anything on our end, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, in keeping with my sterling reputation for short meetings, I'd like to announce that I think within under 40 minutes, we've completed our business today. I really appreciate everyone's attendance and participation. I know, again, that it's a busy time and it's a Friday. So, again, really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in Columbus. With that,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
One last thing, just in an abundance of caution, just for the minutes, would you be able to entertain a motion to waive the quorum requirement?
Oh, sure. Yes. Is there a motion to waive the quorum requirement?
So moved. I move. Hackett from Ohio. I move to waive the quorum requirement.
Thank you. Bob, can you be the second then? Because Paul,
is there anybody?
Thank you.
I don't know if the person making the motion can do the second. Go ahead.
We'll work that out, Bob, but we'll get it between you and Senator Etke one way or the other.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. If someone else made the motion, I will second it.
Thank you so much, Rob.
Either
Appreciate
one.
that. Looking forward to coming to your home state, man.
Looking forward to seeing you.
All right. So we've got the motion to waive quorum. Now I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. So I will declare us adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Good to see everyone. See y'all.
Great job. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.